So you keep making vision boards and wonder why nothing's ever changing? That's because you may not be visual. Do people tell you that you feel too much? Do you ever get told that you're overly emotional? Or maybe you're buying things that you don't need and you don't know why? Learn about primary rep systems and how this information can change the life that you are living right now. Do you ever look at the credit card statement and wonder why your partner is buying all these things that they don't need? Maybe you're AD, maybe they're kinesthetic. Learn how your primary rep system is affecting your relationship and the reasons why you both do what you do. Welcome to Life by 8, your blueprint for living the most extraordinary life. I am Rebecca Grugan, your life architect on this journey to designing your ultimate life. If you are ready to level up using values levels, understanding yourself with the energetic blueprint, our 8 pillars to human wellness framework, this is for you. You are in the right place, so let's go. Have you ever wondered why some people say, "I see what you mean," while others say, "That feels right to me," or "That sounds good, doesn't it?" This isn't just a coincidence. It's tied to your primary representational system. This is the way that you experience and process the world around you. In today's episode, we're diving deeper into the fascinating concept of rep systems, and you're going to learn whether your primary system is visual, kinesthetic, auditory, or auditory digital. This knowledge will transform how you communicate, connect, and grow, whether in your personal relationships or your professional life, or both. You see, whether you're a coach, teacher, parent, or someone keen on understanding others better, this topic is a game changer. By the end of this podcast, you'll have actionable insights to improve your relationships, better understand yourself, and also to understand others. So let's speak into what rep systems are a bit more. So it's a concept from neuro-linguistic programming, also referenced as NLP. Rep systems describe how our brains process and represent information. Whilst we all use all of the systems, most of us have a dominant one. The 4 systems that we speak about in NLP is visual. So these are people who focus on sight, on the things they see. They'll use language like, I can see how that is the solution, or I love how that looks. They think in pictures, and they often use phrases, also known as predicates in NLP, of like, I see what you mean. The kinesthetics, these are the people who focus on their feelings and touch. So they process through their emotions and might say, that feels right, or I don't like how that feels. And this can be whether it is proprioceptive, so the things that are around them, or the emotion in which they're experiencing. So that is kinesthetic. Auditory, these are people who focus on sounds. So they'll say things like, that sounds good. Or they'll process information from what they're hearing more than they will from what they're seeing. And then the 4th one is auditory digital. So these are people who focus heavily on logic and the internal dialogue, that voice inside your head, that's going on. This is the language. This includes phrases like, that makes sense. So AD is more cognitive than the other 3. So I want you to think about how people prefer these different learning styles. For instance, visual learners, they thrive with diagrams and slideshows and things that they can see. Kinesthetic learners prefer hands-on experiences. So they like to move, do activities, and process with that movement and with others. Then there are the auditory learners who excel through listening. So they really love things like audiobooks and podcasts. They really love sitting there and listening to the person who's teaching or speaking to them. And so those are the auditory, whereas, as I said earlier, the AD like to think things through. They'll get the information, they'll process it, they'll think about it, and then they'll respond. But this is when people overanalyze and analyze data or facts more than they do and discount all of the other ways you can get data and information. So how? How can you learn which one you are? Well, firstly, pay attention to your language. So do you often say things like, I see, I feel, I hear, or I think? Because this in itself is a really strong indicator of your primary rep system, the one that you utilize the most. There are some behavioral clues as well. For instance, visuals, they'll often sit upright. They'll prefer organized environments. So they walk into a space and it needs to feel visually organized for them. And they'll use lots of hand gestures because visually they're using this to get their point across. Somebody who's a visual might be walking through a shopping center and something captures their eye in a shop, and that's what takes them into the store. However, a kinesthetic, they're more relaxed and physically engaged with what's going on around them. They're the ones who love big hugs, you know, those ones. They might be walking through a shopping center, and the reason they're at the shopping center is because of how they're feeling, whether that's excited, they're celebrating, or whether they're feeling down and sad. They might be at the shops because of what they're feeling. And then they may be in a store, and dependent on the vibe that they're picking up on, they might be walking through, touching all the clothes, and they like how something feels. And they try it on, and then what it feels like when they're wearing it, whether they feel powerful, whether they feel comfort. These are the things that would impact their decision when it comes to buying. But then you've also got the auditory. So they're excellent listeners and they enjoy verbal communication. They're the people who would go into a shopping center, and if it's too noisy or it's too chaotic, it can overwhelm them. But also if it's complete silence, it affects them as well. And if they walk into a store, most of them will be impacted if nobody talks to them, if nobody offers help, like the shop assistant just ignores them the whole time. They can process what's going on via that and leave because they feel uncomfortable. They want that verbal communication to happen. That's how they process. That's how they make decisions. And then you've got those who are auditory digital. Now, these people are very analytical and they focus on the logic. They are probably at the shopping center because they know exactly why they're there and they know exactly what store they're getting to. They parked in the right place to get just to that store. They're going to buy the thing that they knew and researched before they were going to buy it. They buy it and then they leave. They prefer nobody to talk to them, nobody to try to change their decision. They're very, very analytical. So a visual is more how you process data. So you would prefer, let's speak into deeper. So visuals. Visuals you can feel like you relate to it, and the quiz might show that up for you. There's no one tool that represents fully who you are. However, for a visual, it can be in the way you dress, in the environments that you like to be in. You like them to be brighter, you like them to be visually appealing, whatever that is for you. So that doesn't matter if you're maximalist or minimalist. It just has to look balanced. It has to give you that vibe when you visually walk into it. Otherwise, it can be completely overwhelming and you could feel disorganized. For visuals, it can also mean that you process things fast because of all the amount of data that's coming in visually for you, especially out on the road when there's all of those billboards that you're driving past and all the different colored cars, and you're noticing things that other people might not be able to. However, if your nervous system is not fully regulated, then you may miss some of the details that are coming up in front of you because you're too focused on something else that's going on. And that's where we talk about things like, if you decided you want to buy a new car, all of a sudden you start to see that model and that color car everywhere around you because the filter in which you're processing data has got different needs as well. So you might be visual in regards to your primary rep system, but if depending on how you're deleting, distorting, and generalizing information, that is how you are making decisions. That is more in regards to meta programs when it comes to NLP, more of how you grew up, the way in which you grew up. Those things encapsulate with your primary rep systems who you are and how you do what you do and why you do what you do. So as a visual, be aware of how it impacts you. However, very closely, like visual is just a primary rep system. It's just a step in a strategy. So let's say that you were you were at a shop and you were buying something for this wedding. Your strategy might be VK, ADK. So you see something that you like, you try it on and it feels good. Then you look at the price and it's in budget, then you check how you feel about that price and then you buy it. That's you exit the strategy. So in regards to how you buy things, your buying strategy might be VK, ADK. And that could work really well for you. For some people, they just have VK and they wonder why their house is full of shit that they don't need or lots and lots of clothes that they never wear. And that's because there's no AD in their strategy, which means that they see something, they like it, they feel that it's good, and they just buy it. They don't think about the price. They don't think about any of the data. Do they need it? All of those sort of things. So sometimes in a coaching sense, we want to put AD into their strategy so that they're making stronger decisions, better decisions for them and the life that they have. Lots and lots of children have VK, and as they get older, they start to put AD into their strategies. Now, if you're kinesthetic, if you're a big feelings person, that can impact you when it comes to buying this, where it's like dependent on what time of your cycle is if you're a female. It can be how you feel about your body, what just happened that day, all of these things that can create emotional disturbances that you're unconsciously aware of will affect how you feel when you go shopping for this thing, for this outfit for a wedding. So somebody who kinesthetic might be their primary rep. As I said, they might go through and touch everything that's around them, but they might emotionally be driven by something else at that time that they're not aware of. So their emotions are actually driving the decision on what they're buying. So I know for many kinesthetics, how they feel just before their period will be different to after it. How they feel about summer versus winter, whether they get all hot and sticky in summer and they're already thinking 6 months in advance of I'm going to hate it, so I don't know what I'm going to wear, I don't want to go. That can be impacting their decisions. So somebody who leads with feeling can get triggered emotionally and take things a lot more personally than somebody who might be AD as their primary rep system. So the goal here is to, when you understand your primary, you can then have a look at all of them and learn how or why you might have shut some of these off, but also how you can bring all of them into your life so that you can pull on all of those rep systems when it's required to better your life, but also to strengthen those relationships that you have in and around you, because you can understand and relate to all rep systems instead of your primary. Now, if you are neurodiverse, you may find that you are heavily AD compared to K because of the society that we grew up in. The goal here is that if you are heavily AD, that gets to be a positive. It doesn't have to be a negative, but you may have to learn what kinesthetic looks like for you, but also how to meet the needs of a kinesthetic, even if it's one of your weakest primary rep systems. So just being aware of who you are and what makes you you can allow you to use these rep systems more than you may be pulling from them unconsciously at the moment. You can see how we can be all of those at certain times, but we have these strategies, and understanding your rep system, your primary rep system, allows you to understand how you think. And this is one of the biggest pieces or parts of the work that I do, is helping people understand how they think, not what they think. Because if you can understand how, then you can make true change, true transformation. Because if you know how you're doing it, then you can make more sense of the why. So let's do a quick quiz. I want you to reflect on how you remember things best. Do you visualize the images? Do you feel emotions or sensations? Do you hear sounds or words? Do you think through internal dialogue and logic? What is it for you? And when I'm looking into somebody's primary rep system and I'm being so informal elicitation in NLP, we would ask the client, when was the last time you bought something by yourself that you liked? Think about that. So when was the last time you purchased something by yourself and you liked it? It's really important that you were by yourself, so there's no other outside influence. And it's important that you liked it because we want to understand what your strategy is. When I ask that question and I get the person to speak through what's going on for them, then I can start to get an understanding of how they make decisions, how they think. If they were visually drawn into it because of the color or the fabric, or they were walking through it and they liked what it felt like. if it was because somebody told them that they should get this. All of these ways in which when they can understand how they made the decision, we can understand how that's impacting all areas of their life. And the buying strategy is the easiest to elicitate from somebody. Now, on top of this, there is also eye patterns in NLP, which is not what we're going to go into today, but eye patterns can also help determine somebody's primary rep system as well. So ask yourself that question and then go through when you think, so let's say you get a wedding invitation, and the wedding invitation it's a summer wedding, and you know you need to buy something for it. When you think about that concept, do you then start visualizing pictures of what you might wear? Do you start to think about how you will feel in summer and the type of clothes you need to wear in summer because of how your body feels? Do you start to look online and ask your friends for their opinions of what they should wear, of what you should wear to this wedding? Or do you start to jump on a shop straight away and think about your budget and think about the timing and whether you can actually go to the event or not, and then start scrolling websites for what you might want to go try on in the stores, and then you go into try in the stores? This is going to give you some insight into what your primary rep system might mean or be. Now, knowing your system, it helps you optimize your learning. It helps you with making better decisions, stronger decisions, and at least being consciously aware of why you're making those decisions, and also your ability to look after yourself for that self-care element. For example, a visual person might use vision boards, and they might be way more effective than it would be for a kinesthetic person, because the kinesthetic person, they might benefit from movement or touch during learning, or visualizing, or how they feel. How would they feel when they reach that goal? If they tap into that feeling, that may be a bigger driver than the vision board that works for a visual. When you combine all of these rep systems, that's where the power actually is. But the goal here is to understand what your primary one is, so you can understand how you think, so that you can shift it if it's not working for you. And then understanding others' systems. So we spoke about, understanding it about yourself and why that would be beneficial. Now, why does it matter if you can understand it in others? Because it allows you to communicate in more effective ways that resonate with them. So for instance, you would want to use visual language for a visual person, or to focus on feelings for a kinesthetic person. In coaching, teaching, or sales, tailoring your message to someone's rep system, it actually increases your ability to connect and the effectiveness of the thing that you are teaching. So imagine presenting ideas in a way that truly clicks for your audience. It is so much more potent. It is so much more powerful. When I was doing my trainers training for NLP, we learned a lot about structure of content. We learned a lot about how to meet all the needs when it comes to having a crowd in front of you and the different rep systems playing out at the same time. And we learned, obviously it's got to be visually appealing, the space in which people are in. The chairs have to be comfortable for the kinesthetics. The auditory has to be clear and have clarity so that you're not affecting those who are auditory learners. And you need to have the handout or the data beyond what you're speaking about, so that the ADs can have their needs met too. And then when you start speaking, speaking to the kinesthetics first, and then speaking to the auditory, then speaking to the visuals, then speaking to the AD. Like it is in everything that you do. When you become aware of the power of rep systems and how it impacts people, you are able to start to adjust yourself based off of the crowd or the audience or the person that is in front of you. So in the show notes, you'll be able to see that there's a link to a quiz. And that quiz is to work out whether you are a visual, whether you are kinesthetic, whether you are auditory or auditory digital. It's also a quiz that we do in our I Am Energetic Blueprint, because when you understand this, you can then understand how you think and why you do what you do. So you can do that quiz for free. but it'll give you some more insight beyond the strategies and ideas I've given you in this podcast so far. Now, if you are a visual, it is extremely important to be aware of how that can be overwhelming to certain people. As in, if you are bright and shiny, like I'm a visual, so visual is my primary rep system. So if you wear bright colors, if you wear, sequins like I do a lot, you may be overwhelming for somebody who might be AD or kinesthetic. But it doesn't mean to play small or to dull yourself down. What it could be is just to be aware of it. If your visual looks like that, and then you're speaking in your visual language, and you're not taking into consideration the person you're speaking to and their needs, then it can be a lot. It can be intimidating. It can be overwhelming, and they can shut off completely. So it's being aware of how to show up as yourself, but also how to adapt in a certain scenario that you're in. For instance, if you're a kinesthetic and you love touch and you love hugs, but you're with an AD person who doesn't like touch and just likes to think and likes to be by themselves and internal, then you hugging them and just overstepping boundaries can be really scary for them. So being aware of asking for permission when it's required or consent, just being aware of how your need for that touch can be impacting the people around you. So this is that balance. This is that goal of understanding about yourself so you show up fully as yourself, but also knowing when to adapt so that you are meeting the needs of everybody else, so that your message can be heard, your message can be understood by all of them and their primary rep systems. So understanding your rep systems can really help if you are a leader of a team, a boss of your business, and you have team members, and being able to relate to them and how to give instruction or how to teach them or coach them in a different way based off of those rep systems, whatever's happening for them. That can be super beneficial. Because if somebody is a visual and you're just talking to them and they have no reference to put the picture with the story that you're saying, that can have less impact than if you actually have the pictures or the diagrams to go with what you're saying. If they're kinesthetic and you're just talking monotonely, just talking about data and facts, then you can lose the kinesthetic person because they feel completely cold and disconnected from what you're sharing with them. So being aware of how to meet all of your team members' needs and their rep systems can strengthen your ability to lead instead of just managing. And even in your own partnership or your own relationship, understanding your partner's rep system helps you understand why they might be doing what they're doing. So if your partner is heavily visual, then they're scrolling online and they're just buying random packages that turn up, but you spoke last week about the budget that you were going to be put in, maybe you could start to understand that maybe that budget could be spoken about differently, and maybe you have visuals and diagrams, and maybe you have a vision board for the goals that you're saving or working towards, why that budget's in place in the first place. Sometimes instead of just being like, you just keep buying stuff you don't need, it gives you more insight into how maybe the initial conversation around budgets, goals and things, you could represent that in visual ways, i.e. vision board, or with the budget being with like pretty diagrams and stuff. That can help the visual understand the data more rather than just feeling like they're spoken to. So for instance, I'm very visual, Paul's very AD or K. I am at times AD dependent on it, but we're very much the opposite. So I'm visual, and so I need things like vision boards and goals or what he's trying to say. I need that represented in a visual sense. If Paul is in kinesthetic, then he needs me to listen and to feel in or to be more vulnerable when we're having those conversations. Whereas old versions of me would head into AD, and because kinesthetic was my weakest years ago, and now I allow myself to feel. So if he's coming with K as his rep system at that time, I meet him with that where possible, and where it's not going to be, be a hindrance rather than a benefit. So understanding how it is for you, and then those around you, those who are closest to you, you can start to have more flexibility, and the person with the most flexibility wins in regards to the law of requisite variety when we talk about NLP. So yeah, understanding whether you're visual, kinesthetic, AD, auditory, understanding those around you, you can start to adapt, and that gives you more leverage, that gives you more power, that gives you the chance to be more successful and to have stronger, deeper connections and to really make progress in your life in all ways. So to recap, today we explored 4 primary rep systems: visual, kinesthetic, auditory, and auditory digital, also known as AD. We discussed how to identify yours and how that understanding can transform your life and the relationships you're in. Because if you can understand yourself more, great. And if you can understand others, even better. So now it's your turn. Pay attention to your patterns and those people around you. What is your primary rep system? I would love to know your discovery, and I would love for you to share it in the social media that you're on listening to this, in the comments, send us a DM. What is your primary rep system? Because you might be surprised. As I mentioned earlier, we have a free quiz, and that can help you determine your primary rep system. The link is in the show notes. But don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share these podcasts with someone who loves self-development, self-discovery just as much as you. Thank you for listening. And remember that understanding yourself is the first step to connecting deeply with the world around you. Until next time, take care, keep growing, and living life by 8.